Is Nick Sirianni's success this year just a one-hit wonder, or do you think this is a sign of things to come, leading the way for the Eagles?
To be honest, I think that answer solely depends upon the result of the Super Bowl next week. I mean, if you go out there and say a one-hit wonder led you to a Super Bowl, I think that one-hit wonder was a success. I think everybody is well aware in sports how hard it is to obtain a championship, let alone in the NFL with the season being so short. These seasons come at you quickly. These 16, 17, 18 weeks, whatever it is, they fly. I mean, Kyle and I blink and the season's already over. Imagine these players that are going out there and putting their lives on the line, how they feel. So, I mean, if you consider going into a season with a star-studded roster, a bunch of different personalities, a bunch of different egos, a quarterback that has given you kind of like an up and down performance as his career started with Jalen Hurts, and you would have told me they're going to go 14-3 and they're going to have an easy path to the Super Bowl, I would have laughed in your face. I predicted the Eagles to make the playoffs. I predicted them to win the NFC East, but the road that they would have had to have to go to the Super Bowl the way that they did, I wouldn't have assumed that would have been a possibility. But again, that has to start with coaching. Yes, Howie Roseman was able to go out there and acquire big pieces in not only the free agent market, but on the trade market as well. Yes, he was able to extend specific players and retain everybody. But it takes a special person to hone in those men and keep those egos in check, to keep those veterans with that mindset of we're here to win, to keep those young guys motivated to continue to play and grow and get better. Hassan Reddick, free agent acquisition. James Bradbury, that was a free agent acquisition. Darius Slay was a trade a few years ago. Obviously, you trade for A.J. Brown this year. You draft Jalen Hurts in the second or third round. You trade Carson Wentz for some capital from the Colts. You know what I'm saying? Like, they made moves to get better, and this is the perfect example of how teams do that, and that starts with the head coach. Last year, they were 9-8. They had a super slow start to the year. They end up bouncing back and getting a first-round exit, unfortunately, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But they showed promise, and they showed that they can do it with a young team. Then you go into this year. You start off, I don't remember, what was it, 11-0, 12-0, some shit like that. And then they go and they struggle. They have a little bit of an issue with the injuries to Jalen. The defense starts to struggle a little bit. The offensive line starts to struggle a little bit. They bounce back. They clinch the division, and then they win the games that they need to win. Sirianni's record right now in the regular season is 23-11. That's over a 600% winning percentage. I know that's not a big sample size, but again, when you're talking about the NFL only being 17, 18 games a year, that's pretty solid for a second-year head coach, with a Super Bowl appearance, might I add. So to go from a wild card team to a Super Bowl team, potentially, depending on who you ask, a Super Bowl favored team with one of the better defenses in the league, one of the better offenses in the league. Yes, personnel matters, but execution is what's key. Philadelphia had a super team not too long ago, and they flopped. They were awful. Remember that, Kyle, in the offseason? They went out and they had Michael Vick, Vince Young, all these star-studded players with Chip Kelly's Lucius offense.
Nnamdi Asmoah, remember him?
You see where I'm getting at? They had their super team, and it fell apart. Nick Sirianni found a way to get these personalities together in a room in the offseason, in camp, and said, this is our goal. This is what we're going to do. And to those of you that say that's every coach's job, the point is, are they successful? Success is determined by winning. And if you win a Super Bowl, that is success. Again, personnel makes a difference. Schedule matters. But executing on game day throughout the season, week in and week out, is what matters the most. They're going up against their toughest opponent yet, in Patrick Mahomes. So this will be another test for the team. But from a coaching perspective, where Nick Sirianni came from in terms of his coaching world, this being his first head coaching opportunity to go from a wildcard team to a Super Bowl team, I would say it's pretty impressive. And I would say if they win the Super Bowl this year, whether or not it's a one-hit wonder or not, in terms of if people end up leaving in free agency, they have to figure out cap situations, I would say that one-hit wonder, it worked out pretty well for them.
Kev, we sort of highlighted this last year because, granted, they got defeated by the Bucs pretty significantly in that wild card game last year. But you and I, we both saw that the Eagles were trending in the right direction, especially how
Right.
they played that second half of not this past season, but last season. And we definitely saw that obviously Jalen Hurts was getting comfortable being the starting quarterback. And as far as I see it, Kev, the elevation of his game this year to the point where he was in consideration for MVP honors. I think you could tie that back to what Nick Sirianni was able to establish, not only with the offense, because, it's one thing to run the offense as effectively as they have. And he's been really a great play caller for them this year. But when you instill that type of confidence and competence on the offensive side of the ball, that makes the defensive side of the ball, their job, a lot easier. And you could tell now that the offense is running and gunning, you could tell just the confidence level of the defense has been risen to a point where Kev, the defense had what 70 total sacks this year. They were only a couple sacks away from
Two
the.
two away from tying the all-time sack record.
You could just tell that the Eagles are trending in a right direction. Not only this year, but as far as I see it, I think that the Eagles right now are set up for long-term success for probably the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not going to project out 5 to 10 years. That's way too far. But they're in a good position right now. And I do think that Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit for that. Because, when we look at what the Eagles have been able to display this year, they were consistently one of the best teams, if not the best team, for an extensive part of the year. And mind you, when you look over the last couple of years when you look at the top teams in the NFL, it's mostly been teams like the Rams, the Buccaneers with Tom Brady. You look towards the AFC, you could look towards the Chiefs and the Bengals. The Eagles weren't really even in that conversation last year. Granted, like I said, they were trending in the right direction, but nobody was saying that the Eagles would go from 9-8 last year, get spanked by the Bucks in the first round of the playoffs last year, to this is a number one seed, and this is a team that could potentially win a Super Bowl. For me, I didn't see this type of leap from the Eagles happening this year. I maybe thought, okay, maybe they can make a divisional round, maybe they can even make a championship game in the NFC. But to go all the way to the Super Bowl in the manner that they've done it, I have to say, Nick Sirianni has done a fantastic job in just leading this group of men to the success that they've had this year. And to get the crowning achievement of winning a Super Bowl potentially, would really be the icing on the cake for them as a whole. Nick Sirianni, when it comes to him specifically, he's going to be probably the coach of the year, or he should at least be one of the top guys in consideration for it. And we'll see what happens with the Eagles moving forward. And I'm of the mindset that they're set up for some pretty good success here, not just for this year totality, but I think as long as the roster stays relatively healthy, if they're able to retain some core pieces moving forward for the next couple of years, I think the Eagles are going to be in a good place moving forward from here. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles find themselves in a situation where they could play for another Super Bowl or be in contention for a Super Bowl past this season. And I think as long as Nick Sirianni is able to just establish that, I guess, aura of consistency in winning games week in and week out, I think the Eagles are going to be in a good position moving forward. That's just how I see it.